Today we're going to install Splunk Enterprise. So basically we're gonna. I just fired up a new VM here just to test this out on. So brought up Splunk 1 here. Anyways, we are going to install Splunk Enterprise on this. Now we're not going to do the Splunk Forwarder today. We're going to do the Splunk Forwarder in the next video. So this video we're just going to show you how to install Splunk Enterprise, and I'm going to probably pull some data from the host that I install it on. But the next video we're going to do the Splunk Forwarder. So basically this is just installing Splunk Enterprise. So if you see here on the right side, this is my document. And if you want to find this document so you can copy and paste the commands or whatever else, you can just check the link in the description. You're going to find a link to this page right here. This is my page where I put together my Splunk guide. Anyways, there's a few things I go over here, and some of it I'm going to cover today. Now if you look on the left side here, this terminal is logged into a host called Splunk 1. This is where I'm going to install Splunk today. And over here we got a terminal where I'm going to SCP Splunk over. So let's just SCP the Splunk, this tar.gz file over. Now we're not going to use the deb file at the moment. We could use the deb package, or because we're installing this on Ubuntu, we could use the deb package, but we're not going to. Because it doesn't really give you a whole lot, so I'll get into that. You could also use an RPM file if you were on Red Hat, which we're also not on Red Hat, so we're not going to use that. All right. Anyways, let's jump over here and look at what is covered in this doc and what we're going to go over today. I'm basically going to flow through this. I'm going to go through this doc step at a time. So we're going to install it. This is the basic Splunk Enterprise install. We're going to install it as the Splunk user, so we're going to create a dedicated user for Splunk. And I really should just jump right into this really quick. But we are also, so we're not going to use the deb package, because basically what the deb package does is it gives you a new service user called Splunk. It unpacks all the Splunk files to the op directory, and it will make sure that those files are owned by Splunk, but it doesn't do a whole lot other than that. It doesn't start the service. It doesn't, accept the license. It doesn't, create an admin user to actually log into Splunk itself. It doesn't, it doesn't add Splunk to sudo or to the sudo group, which you kind of need to. You don't need, but there are other ways to do it. But you kind of want it to enable it to start on boot. It won't have it start on boot for you. It doesn't even set up like your Splunk home or your path environment variables for the Splunk user. So a lot of stuff the package doesn't do. So you're doing all this stuff yourself. So there's almost no point. The little that the package does do, there's almost no point in using the package. That's why I choose not. I'm going to show you how to do it with the tar.gz the packaged up tar.gz, but I'm not going to show you the deb package because there's not a whole lot to it. But basically I have this section on my document showing you how you could, SCP it over the same as the tar.gz file, and just do an apt update and then do dpackage-i and install it. So you could do that. I show you how to do it here, but I'm not going to do that in this video. I'm not going to actually do that in this video. Now, if you have Splunk already installed, running as either root or some other user that as your personal account or whatever, you can convert this to run as Splunk. I have some instructions at the bottom here showing you how you can change it to, basically you have to create the user, chown the files, and then do a few other things, like you have to run this enable, disable the start on boot, and then run enable start on boot and specify the user. And you can actually do that without being logged in as that user. But you can use this if you already have Splunk installed and you want to convert it to run as a dedicated user. You could use these instructions. I'm not going to go over that today. I'm going to go over how to set it up from the beginning. So this first section of my doc, I show you how to install Splunk Enterprise, from the beginning, as a dedicated user from the start. Now the official, Splunk Enterprise documentation, like we see here, we have the install docs for Splunk. Now they don't even bother to tell you. I guess they just want you to get up and running fast, but they just tell you to unpack it and run it right away. They don't specify creating a user or anything like that. It actually tells you right here. It does not create the Splunk user. If you want it to run as a specific user, you got to create it manually before you install, and you will find things on the official Splunk site in the documentation on how to create a user and stuff, but it wasn't here on this page anyways. So the default instructions are just going to have you bringing it up and running. So I imagine a lot of people have it running as whatever user they happen to be logged in as. So my instructions, by default, I'm just including instructions to add the user, which is pretty straightforward. So I've gone on and on for way too long, and I should just jump right into how to get this done. So first thing we're going to do is SCP the file over, which we have right here. So I'm just going to hit enter here, and there we go. It's copying over. Should go pretty quick because it's on the local network. And there we go, it's done. So we've copied our tar.gz file. Now I'm going to jump over here to the server. So I'm basically going to, we just untar it and then we move it to the opt directory. So if we do an ls, you're going to notice you have this one file here, Splunk. I should maybe move, I think this is all right. I was almost thinking of moving my terminal. Hopefully this is visible enough on the video. Hopefully I zoomed in enough that the text isn't too small. I want to get everything on the screen, but I don't want it to be too small to see. So anyways, tar xvfz to extract it, be verbose, and specify the file, and to also unzip it. So you can say Splunk. All right, so that's the why is this hanging? All right, so untar it like that. All right, there we go. And this is, it's going and going, but it doesn't take too long. This should be done in a matter of seconds. It doesn't take all that long. The other thing that's going to take a little bit of time is actually starting Splunk up, but that's also not that big of a deal. It still takes there we go, we're done. It takes a matter of seconds to start it up too. So we've just untarred this file, and now we're gonna use sudo to move it over to opt, because opt is owned by root. So we're just going to paste that here and sudo it right over, move it right over. All right, so there we go. So it's in opt. Now notice I logged in as my own user. So who am I? I'm logged in as user 1. Now we're going to want Splunk to run as Splunk. Now I could have just logged in as Splunk, but I'm assuming that's just going to be an account that I use as like a kind of a service account, even though we log into it to run Splunk related commands. When you're adding like forwarders and stuff in the future, you're going to want to be able to do that. So you can log in as it, but it's basically a service account, and I don't set it up with SSH keys to SSH over. At least that's not what I'm doing yet. But I'm assuming you're going to log in as yourself and then become Splunk. So I SCP the file over as my own user. Kind of a decision I had to make. I had to figure out if I wanted to, SCP it over to, the Splunk home directory or to my own home directory, and then like chown the files. Anyways, this is how I thought made the most sense. You could do it, another way if you prefer. But what we're going to do is first we're going to add the user. Now you could use the add user command, or you could use the user add command. User add command doesn't do things like copy the SCL and copy things over from the SCL directory when it creates your user account, so it won't give you like a profile or a bash RC, which is anyways, it won't set up your profile and stuff. So using the user add command is more of a low level command, and it doesn't do a lot of things that you would kind of expect it to do. And the add user command does do a lot of things, and it tries to like grab information about the user that's even not necessary. We'll show you how to do that right now actually. But to make things easy, just use the add user command. Otherwise, you're gonna have like a ton more a bunch of more steps to set up your users. So here we see, all right, so see how it copies files from etc creates the home directory for you, so you don't have to create a home directory and chown it. You don't have to set up your bash RC with a bunch of variables and stuff. You don't have to, that's not the kind of stuff you want to deal with when you're just trying to create an account for Splunk. So create a password, and we can skip adding the full name, the room number, the work phone. You're not going to need that just for a Splunk user. It's not even a real person. Yeah, so you can even hit enter here. I guess Y is going to be the default. And yeah, so now we are going to chown this. And there we go. So opt is now owned by Splunk. Opt Splunk is owned by Splunk. So there we go, all owned by Splunk. Now we could have just created the user first and then SCP'd the file over to that home directory and done that as Splunk, but yeah, I like the way I did it. Yeah, you can do it differently if you want, but whatever works for you. Anyways, the other thing, now there are other ways to do this, but I choose to add the Splunk user to the sudo group. That will allow it to that will give it sudo access, which will show you why that's important later. There are a few cases where you use sudo as the Splunk user. So this is pretty easy. Just edit this file. Just edit the etc group file. And so here's sudo. And jump to the end of the line. You'll see user 1, the account that I log in as by default. That's my non-root user. That's already part of sudo by default for Ubuntu. So I'm just going to add Splunk on here, and there are other ways around this, but this made the most sense to me. Now, so anyways, there we go. Just add Splunk to that one line, and now we are going to we're going to sudo to the user Splunk. So we're going to become the Splunk user. So now we're logged in as Splunk here. Now the first thing we're going to do is set up some environment variables. We're going to set up Splunk home, which is opt Splunk, but then we're also going to add the bin directory to our path. So under Splunk home, which is opt Splunk, there's a bin directory, which is where all your binaries like the Splunk command and stuff exist. And we want those to be on your path, so you can just type them without having to type the full path for the command. This is going to be useful going forward. Not so much during the installation process, a little bit during the installation process, but there are some places where we still have to specify the full path, and that ended up being the easiest way to do it. But in the future, when you have to run Splunk commands to run queries or to check things or to add input, that's going to be really convenient and helpful and just simplify the process a whole lot. So first thing we're doing is we're exporting Splunk home and then exporting the path. We're adding the bin directory under Splunk home to your existing path. Next, we're going to add those same commands to your bash RC file. Now this way, when you log out and back in, those variables are still going to be set. So tail-n 5.bash rc. So yeah, anyways, yeah, actually I was looking at that right. Yeah, so you'll see it adds those to the end of the file. It adds yeah, your Splunk. So anytime you log in as the Splunk user, it's going to export these variables for you. So we're not going to have to do that again as the Splunk user. So essentially, just remember to run these things, and it will set that all up for you. So the next thing we're going to do is initially start Splunk. And rather than having to page through a long license and then finally accept it, you could say Splunk start, but if you don't want to read the license, you can just pass the thing that says accept license. So you can say Splunk start accept license. All right, so we're going to paste that in right here. All right, Splunk start accept license. And this is going to start up Splunk for the first time. Now, while saying accept license means we don't have to accept the license, there are a few other things we do need to do. We have, since it's the first time starting it, we have to create an account that you will actually use to log into the Splunk GUI. This is totally different from the user that Splunk runs as. So typically, this is an admin user, so you're just gonna, typically people just call it admin by default, admin. Then I'm just gonna use an easy password that I can remember for testing purposes. For prod, you might wanna use like a real password that's actually complicated, but you see here it sets everything up for you. And now Splunk is going to be running. Now on the local host, it would be at 127.0.0.1.8,000. It's actually waiting for it to be available. But our server, this is running on a VM, not on our local host. So our server is actually at right here, 218. So we're going to copy this IP address. I'm going to go over here, open a new tab, and let's see here. Paste in the IP, colon, 8000. So port 8000 on the IP of our, and see down here it's saying we could access the interface at Splunk 1 8000. And if I had that set up in DNS, you could just go to that. And that's normally what you do in production. You just specify the host name. But I haven't set this up in DNS yet. I actually just spun up this VM like a minute before starting recording this video. So it's a fresh VM, just cloned from a template. I didn't set it up in DNS. That would have been cleaner, but we're going based on, so this host name only works on this host. It doesn't work anywhere else. So I'm going to specify the IP address in the port, and this is going to bring up the Splunk GUI initially. So there we go. There's our Splunk GUI. Now we want to log into it just to try it out. We're not done yet, but so log right in. And there we go. There is, yeah, it's telling me all kinds of stuff. So here we go. Here's the Splunk GUI by default. Now, you could add data, explore data, etc. So anyways, let's jump back over here. So we're not done yet because this isn't going to start on boot. So yeah, and basically everything I'm doing is in this doc. But what you're going to want to do is, so we can log into it now, but we're going to go back over to our server here. We're going to stop Splunk. So we're going to say Splunk stop, and you can just do this as the Splunk user, no need for sudo. Well, first, you know what, before I even do that, let's check that Splunk is running, and we'll be able to see a bit about it here. Splunk, so just do psef and grep for Splunk. You'll see a bunch of processes. These are all Splunk, and you notice they're running as the Splunk user. So I started them as the Splunk user without sudo, and they're running as Splunk, just as they should. So anyways, and notice I can use the Splunk command because I set this up on the path before. Splunk stop. So now we're shutting down Splunk. Takes a little bit. It's not instantaneous. It takes longer than I feel like it should, but it's not that bad. And there we go. Splunk is down. Now, one funny thing, if you grep for it again, okay, it's all dead. I was actually having a process just hang there for a little bit longer, which was kind of strange. One thing I noticed in the past, looks like it's not doing it now. Anyways, so once you've stopped Splunk, you can now enable it to start on boot. If you try to enable it to start on boot while it's running, it's going to tell you Splunk's running. You can't do that. It just doesn't like it when you do that. So you can say, so we're using Ubuntu 20.04, which uses systemd. So we're going to set this up with systemd. If you don't like systemd, you probably should use a distro that doesn't use systemd, and you probably know enough to set this up your own way for that distro. Anyways, this distro does use systemd, so we're going with systemd. It's the standard way on Ubuntu these days. Same deal with Red Hat, and same deal with Arch Linux. But plenty of non-systemd distros out there. If you're running like BSD or something or whatever else, you're not going to have systemd either. Anyways, so here we're going to run sudo, and we're going to run the Splunk command enable boot start systemd managed 1 to enable it as systemd managed. So we're going to enable it to start on boot controlled by systemd. Now we need sudo to do anything with systemd, but it's going to set it up to run as whatever user we were running it as. So since we're running sudo from the Splunk account, This tool knows that we sudoed from Splunk, and it's going to set it up to run as Splunk, even though it's running this command as root. Now, when we run sudo, we can't just say sudo Splunk because it doesn't know, we haven't set up those environment variables for the root user. Now, we could do that, but this is just about the only case where we're going to run a Splunk command as root. So I'm not bothering to set those. You could set those up as root, but I'm not going to. Now, you could also pass the variables to the sudo command, but it gets to be this really convoluted long command. So I found the easiest thing, you could do it your way, whatever way you prefer if you don't like doing it this way. But as unsettling as it is after setting up the path and everything, I'm still specifying the full path to the Splunk command for the sudo command, because it's going to run as root, and it still knows enough to run it as Splunk. Now, if I were to run this command as my own personal user, logged in as user 1, it's going to run. It will tell systemd to run Splunk as that user. Whatever user I'm sudoing from, this Splunk enable command will see that what I sudoed from and set that to be the user that it runs as. Just worth noting. So I've tested it out both ways. I've done a lot of playing around with this before I put these instructions together, and that's basically how it behaves. Kind of a strange way for things to work, but that's how it is. Anyways, we are going to run, and I played around a bit with the variables just to kind of get all that worked out. And this is I think this is the right way to do it, given how the tools behave. So, all right, so it says, Splunk will start under systemd as user Splunk, and systemd unit file installed at etc systemd Splunk service, configured as a managed service. So that's exactly what we want. Let's actually just cat this file just in case we're curious. So paste that in there. And there we go. There's our standard systemd service for Splunk. So that's all fine and great. Now we're able to run, systemctl list unit files and grep for Splunk, and we should see it there. So let's see here. There we go. Splunk is enabled, but not running. Not yet, anyway. If I were to reboot, it would come up running. So there we go. Splunk's not running. It just shows my current shell instance that I'm logged in as the Splunk user, shows like my instance of bash and stuff, but it doesn't show Splunk running. So what we're going to do, we can start and stop it using the systemctl command, which you'd have to sudo to. You could probably also start and stop it with the Splunk command as the Splunk user, which should work. Anyways, let's try with systemctl. So systemctl start. Now you should see Splunk coming up. So it's starting. There's a couple processes there. It'll take a bit for all of them to come up. Let's see. So it says disconnected from the Splunk server. So I guess it's going to let me know when it reconnects. Or I may have to refresh. All right, so we have a bunch of processes up and running now. There we go. Bunch of Splunk processes, and we see that it is now started up again. Session's expired, so let's log back in. Admin. Here's my password. And we are now logged back in. So that's it for, and this document you see here in this tab is not finished. I'm actually going to be removing these instructions for the universal forwarder and updating them to another page, and I'm going to create a separate video for that. Similar to how I took the instructions that I had here and moved them over to this separate document over here. This is my installing Splunk document. So this is like my general Splunk document. This is my installing Splunk Enterprise document, and I'm also going to create a separate document for the universal forwarder. So that one's going to come up for my next video. So next video, we're going to show you how to use the universal forwarder, how to set that up. I'm going to put together the document for that, put that in the description of that video. So anyways, so here's our Splunk GUI. We just logged in. Let's see what it shows us for adding data. All right, looks like your first time on this page. Would you like a quick tour? We're going to skip that for now. And let's see, so there are a lot of different places you could get data from. You could even upload files from your computer. You could monitor files and ports on the Splunk platform instance. You could get it from the forwarder, which is what we just talked about. Let's see. It looks like we have some guides on how I guess these are guides up here. Anyways, let's see what we can get if we do this. So files and directories. So let's jump into var log, and maybe what we want to look at. Let's see if we can monitor DMSG or all right, so there we go. We've got some data in. It's able to monitor and pull in data from DMSG. So you could assign it to different indices. You could create a new index if you want. There's a ton of things here you could play with, which are for future videos. I would like to get into detail about how to set up new indices, how to set up new apps, how to do a ton of different things. I'd also like to get into the SPL. I'd like to do videos on each of the commands, and maybe one big video where I talk about how to use the query language. But a bunch of stuff coming up in the future. But at this point, I mostly just wanted to get Splunk up and running. So I wanted to show how to install Splunk, how to get it up and running as a dedicated user, and how to just get some data into Splunk just to show that it actually is working. Going beyond, I'm not going to go too much further than this, just because this is kind of what I set out to do in this video. And we'll have plenty more in future videos. I think the first thing I'm going to start with in the next video, when I set up the universal forwarder, is probably going to be to monitor like an Nginx instance or something like that, just to start with something simple. But we're going to test out a ton of things. So anyways, file input has been created successfully. So we're monitoring the DMSG file under var log. So now we could extract fields, we could add more data, download apps, we could do dashboards. Well, let's start searching. I kind of think that's where it wants us to start. I know there's a tour and everything, but yeah. Anyways, see, this is very easy to parse. So we have source equals varlog dmsg, host is Splunk1, source type so it even understands the source type, so it knows what type of log we're pulling things from, which is pretty neat. What else here? So you can basically, it's similar to grepping. You can grab things from and filter things based on fields, and you can have all sorts of neat logic in your search queries. So just building up search queries, there's a whole language for this called SPL that we're going to get into in the future. I'm not going pretty much anywhere further with this for now. But this is basically it. This is Splunk working. This is the data Splunk was able to pull in from our local log files. So I would call this a success. We have a whole lot more stuff to cover going forward in the future. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. We're going to be covering more Splunk stuff, but we're going to be covering a ton of other server-related stuff, coding-related stuff, and just basically our channel, we do tech in general. So we have a few different subsections and topics we cover, everything from coding to servers, hardware, software, electronics, robots, all sorts of tech-related stuff that we want to cover. So we have a lot of interesting and useful content that we put together. You might want to hit the subscribe button if this is the kind of stuff you like seeing in your YouTube feed. You're probably going to want to hit the bell icon so that YouTube will actually alert you when we do come out with new videos and updated content. You might want to give us a thumbs up if you found this video useful or maybe a little bit interesting. Also, more importantly, just leave a comment down below if you have any questions, comments, criticisms. If you know something that I don't know, please do let me know down below. I like hearing from everyone. I try to get back to everyone. I don't always get back to everyone very quickly. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But I try to get back to everyone, and I do want to know what everyone has to think and what everyone has to say. So do leave a comment down below. Hopefully someone finds this video useful. Hopefully this helps people. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you guys next time.